as South Africa goes to the polls, I wanted to talk about their presidents. But before, I had recorded two videos relevant to South Africa. The first video was last year during the early times of this YouTube, which talked about proportional representation. So you'll know how they vote. They don't have constituency MPs, and they vote proportionally. So if you watch the proportional, you learn more. And also, a few months later, I went to Eldoret and I showed a church which is connected to former South African president. One of the South African presidents, Frederick de Klerk, was born in Plato in Eldoret, and he used to attend that church near 64 Stadium. So you watch those two as you watch these and other tapes concerning South Africa. South Africa is a unique country, more unique than any other in Africa. It is unique in that when the whites came to South Africa, it is the same time that blacks came to South Africa. The whites took off from Cape Town and went north, and Africans came from Central Africa. This is the Bantus, came from Central Africa going southward, and these ones were going northwards. One was going anti-clockwise and the other one was going clockwise. So there's a time even when white South Africans have always said that they are as much Africans as are the Zulus, Zohas, and other tribes. So South Africa was a British colony, but those people who were running it were Boers from Dutch. You see, the South African whites were originally from Dutch, Holland. So when South Africa was a colony of Britain, it is them who were running it. They were not happy, but you see, they could not transfer the control of South Africa to Holland because of the African petitioning agreement that was there. So it is around 1948 that they declared that they are a free country where they were not answerable to anybody. They were no longer a colony of Britain. You see, if you are a colony of Britain like Kenya was, we had a ministry in Britain called Ministry of Colony Affairs. But when the colonies became independent, then the ministry was turned into the Ministry of Commonwealth. So the Minister for Colony Affairs is the one who used to appoint governors in different colonies. So they say they are no longer a colony of Britain, and they became an independent country around in 1948. And again in 1948 is when they started the system of apartheid. The president then was called Vaud, 1948. They started apartheid. Apartheid is a Dutch word. Apartheid is a Dutch word meaning apartness. Apartness. Apartness, okay, in the English proper word is not apartness, but the English proper word is segregation. Africans are placed apart, Europeans are placed apart, Indians Asians and colored people are placed apart. So it is apartness. We call it segregation, but it is apartness. But in Dutch language or Boer language, it is called apartheid. Now, when they had that apartness, uh, you see, they are Dutch, yes, but they speak a different type of Dutch language, Boer language. Why? It is just like Americans, they speak English, but they speak different English from the British English. So these Dutch who are in South Africa, they spoke a different a different Dutch language or Boer language, which they said that since they are in Africa, they called it Afrikaner. So they say that the Afrikaner, but they speak Dutch. If one speaks Afrikaner and another one speaks Dutch, it is like somebody speaking the American English and another one speaking the Queen's English. So they continued that way. In the 70s, South Africa had a president called John Vorster. John Vorster was very harsh. I remember VOK then. We had several stations. We had VOK, we had Radio Tanzania Dar es Salaam, we had the German radio DW, Deutsche Welle. Deutsche Welle means Deutsch, Germans call themselves Deutsch, and Welle is voice. So voice of Germany in German language is called Deutsche Welle. Have you noticed the name? Germans call themselves Deutsch and Hollands call themselves Dutch. Yeah, it is the same name. Actually, Deutsch and Dutch means people. People. So you'll find that the Dutch, the Holland, and whatever have a background. Just like they have a background. Unajua hata wazungu wako na mkabila. That's why in Britain there were two races which combined together. There was Anglo and there was the Saxon. Saxon were coming from France, I think. So they called themselves Anglo-Saxon. But because the Anglo, that is where the word English came from. So you'll find that if you follow them according to their race, you'll find that the Dutch has a historical race relationship with the German. So in the 70s we had John Vorster, who was very bad, and all these stations you could hear, the foreign station, the BBC, the Voice of America, Radio Tanzania Dar es Salaam, VOK. They used to call South Africans Makaburu wa South Africa, and then Rhodesians were called Walowezi. I'll talk about Rhodesia in another video, but you see, Walowezi in Kiswahili, that is settlers. Those are settlers. So Makaburu wa South Africa wakiongozwa na Kaburu John Vorster, that was the president. It was very harsh. In the 40s and 30s, they felt that Africans should not stay in their suburbs. They built very good houses for Kenyans. Let's say I can talk about Muthaiga, I can talk about Mudhangari, Lavington, I can talk about Karen and so on, and Runda. But you see in Kenya, in Nairobi, next to Langata and Karen, there is Kibera. Next to Muthaiga, there is Mathare. And next to Mudhangari and Lavington, there is Kawangware. But Wazungus did not want slums near them. So they built slums away from, one of the slums was, the most known one, was built in the direction of southwest of Johannesburg. They built a township that people now, it was Southwest Township. If you join that one, you find Soweto. So Africans who used to work there, unless you are a watchman, if it reaches 6 in the evening, you're supposed to be gone. For example, for somebody in Kenya to understand, you're working in Langata, Hadi, or Karen. It reaches 6, you go to Kibera, board a train, and go to Limuru. Or if you're working in Mudaiga, you go to a railway station there, then you are taken to Ruiru. But since this town was in the direction of southwest, so it was Southwest Township, it was called Soweto. So means south, where west. To is township. Southwest Township, Soweto. That is how Soweto got its name. John Vorster had 2 ministers. The one who was very much known was Pik Botha. That was in the 80s now. Pik Botha was the known minister because he was the Minister for Foreign Affairs. But we had a Minister for Home Affairs, also called Botha. Botha was Minister for Home Affairs. And when he's the one who took over from John Vorster. And Pik Botha just disappeared. He continued with that, and when he continued with that, the next president was Eldoret-born, Kenyan-born Frederick de Klerk. Frederick de Klerk became the president. Is it 1989 or somewhere there? Either very late 80s. He took over, and he is the one who initiated matter of doing away with apartheid and bring the. First of all, he wanted to free Mandela. He wanted Mandela to be free, but Mandela said, even though he has spent so many years in prison, he did not want to leave one prison to another prison. Meaning, all South Africans were prisoners, so he put a condition for freedom. I will talk about Mandela's jail term. You know, he also had, I don't know why this man's supporters are very harsh. And sometimes I ask myself, now I'm talking about Kenyan supporters of somebody. I'm asking, suppose this fellow would have been the president. If you criticize him in the opposition, they want to kill you. Yes, Mandela had the privileges in prison. He had there's even a time he moved out of prison cells and stayed in. It's like in a committee, moving out of the segregated cells, and then you are told to go and occupy the committee commandant's official residence, and you are a prisoner. So, watu wa Gwambo, if I tell lies, then tell me I'm telling lies. But suppose I tell about Mandela's being in the, will you say that I've been bought? So I'll come one day and talk about that. So it is de Klerk who brought in this and Mandela, and they came and agreed and formed a government. Remember, South Africa had never had a vice president or a deputy president. So Mandela, when Mandela came to become the president, the constitution was changed for him to have a deputy president or deputy presidents. Then he decided to have 2 deputy presidents. One was de Klerk, who was the president, and now he was now the deputy president. And the other deputy president was Mbeki, a son of a former ANC leader. Now, when Mandela, Thabo Mbeki is the one who was the second vice, who was one, not the second, but one of the 2 deputy presidents. So Mandela became the president, and he only served 1 term and then retired. he handed it over to Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki. Many of us believe that Cyril Ramaphosa was the one who was supposed to be the president, but you see, Mandela was also by making Thabo Mbeki the president or the deputy president and later the president, he was alikuwa anarudisha mkono kwa his former colleague in freedom fighting, Govan Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki did not he stayed for 9 years when the ANC removed him and placed Jacob Zuma, his deputy. You know, in South Africa, although South Africa has a different constitution, but South Africa, it is the party that is elected. So when the party is elected, it takes its leader to be the president. So when ANC itself refused, that they did not want Thabo Mbeki, then his vice president Jacob Zuma became the president. Later on, Jacob Zuma ruled for 9 years, and then again huyo alikuwa na mascandos, some of which are not supposed to be mentioned in a video that is watched by everybody. Then he was taken out because of the several scandals, and then the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, took over. He is still there. They don't have term limits. And Cyril Ramaphosa is still the president. Thank you.